Color guard advance. Cross the colors. Post the colors. Please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to introduce Chris Vanderfleet.
Thank you, everybody, for coming today. Good afternoon. Welcome to a celebration of the life of those inhabitants at God's Acre Cemetery. Thank you all for battling the weather today. It was not ideal for Historic or Troop 32, but we are trying to make the most of it. We do feel this ceremony would be most impactful at the cemetery itself, but have included pictures of the grave sites to supplement some of the speeches today, which will be shown in the center here. While we're not at the cemetery, I will speak as if we are there. The lands you're standing on were once part of a campsite of the Lenni-Lenape tribe of the Native American Indians. It looked much different back in the day, as the lands were more of a gradual sloping meadow down to where the lake is. There are a total of 23 gravestones or markers at the cemetery, and a total of 4 unmarked graves. There are 4 graves we know of with no stones, but we know whom is buried there. The oldest gravestone is dated May 31st, 1791, the inhabitant of Henry Doty, who lived on Brookdale Road. Cemeteries like these were not the only places for burials, but as you will find out, were for more families. Many of the inhabitants of the cemeteries within the cemeteries are related. Small cemeteries like these are rare and have virtually disappeared in today's world. As with any historical project, there's always more research that can be done. And we wanted to mention that the Smalley family is well represented as inhabitants at the cemetery. And they have many ties to other street names and structures in Warren and Watchung, including Smalley Town Road and the Smalley Town Schoolhouse. These relationships are complex. This ceremony today is also a celebration of Matt King's work for his Eagle Scout project. As with any Eagle Scout project, he coordinated other scouts and members of the community to make this project a reality. A special thanks to Greg Pinho, who helped Matt obtain the new gravestones placed at the cemetery, Jay Stiles from Troop 32, Watchung TBW for helping assist in cleaning of the site during Matt's work on the Eagle Scout project. Bob Mayers provided some additional fun facts, which you will hear today, about the cemetery, and we have added into this presentation. Steve Pote for his inspiration and continued support for the project during his time as mayor, Sue Tucker, who served as Matt King's advisor on the project, and the Watchung Historical Committee for their help in coordination and pulling the ceremony off, including making and editing some of the bios of the inhabitants. At this time, I'd like to introduce Mayor Balla.
First, on behalf of the Boy Scout Troop 32, the Historical Committee of Watchung and the Borough of Watchung, I'd like to welcome everybody here and thank you for coming out to be a part of this. I think it's tremendous. If anybody hasn't visited the cemetery, I would encourage you to do so. I like history myself, and there's a lot of great things we can learn from the past so we don't make the same mistakes. We should look to the past so we do things better going into the future. But the interesting thing I saw at the cemetery was that 3 of the persons buried there were born before the birth of our country. So they were born before the birth of our country. I view those folks as patriots. 3 or 4 of them were born before the War of 1812. And were here during the War of 1812, which is the second revolution where our country fought against the British. And at that time in the War of 1812, for those of you that remember your history, there was a battle at Fort McHenry in Baltimore. And that was the birth of the Star-Spangled Banner when Francis Scott Key was inspired at the raising of the flag at Fort McHenry after 25 hours of bombardment by the Royal Navy. Back in 1776, New Jersey's population was 139,000. Not a lot. By the War of 1812, the population was 250,000. Today, New Jersey's population is 9 million. Stark difference. So I kind of view all these old people of that time, they're all patriots in the founding and birth of our country, the freedom and independence that we have, and the lives and liberties that we pursue here in our country. So with that, it's a tremendous honor on my part to put forth acknowledgement of the hard work here of Matt King and the Historical Commission and all the other Boy Scouts who helped in this endeavor. So we have a proclamation. Whereas the vision of the Boy Scouts of America is to prepare young men to become responsible, participating citizens and leaders who are guided by the Scout Oath and law, and whereas for his Eagle Scout project, Watchung resident Matthew Ryan King and life member of the Patriots Path Council, Troop 32, chose to commemorate the veterans from the area of Watchung who served to keep our country free, and whereas Matthew spent countless hours researching the history of the individuals buried in God's Acre Cemetery, that until this project was implemented, was neglected, overgrown with vegetation, had deteriorating grave markers sinking into the ground, and in one case, no marker at all. And whereas, with assistance of his fellow scouts from Troop 32 and guidance from his troop leader, Jay Stiles, and project coach, Susan Tucker, Matthew cleaned up and reset grave markers, removed overgrown vegetation and poison ivy, and most importantly, created an online database that will forever document the 23 identifiable stones in the cemetery, creating a permanent tribute to those who lost their lives and for the families of those heroes who lost their lives as far back as the Revolutionary and Civil Wars. And whereas Matthew serves as an example to his peers through his high level of personal achievement, leadership, and community service, and has made the residents of the borough of Watchung very proud, now therefore I, Mayor Keith Balla, do hereby proclaim Sunday, May 5th, 2019, as Matthew King Day in the borough of Watchung, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, and on behalf of the governing body of the borough of Watchung, County of Somerset, State of New Jersey, wish Matthew much success as he pursues his education and achieves his goals. Congratulations.
At this time, I'd like to introduce Sue Tucker.
Hi, I'm very fortunate to be the troop committee chair of Troop 32, which means that I do a lot of the organizational stuff. I don't have to go camping. That's Jay's job. I had my turn. But the most fun part of it is when I get to be an Eagle advisor. And to have watched some of these young men develop from when they came to us as pretty wild 11-year-olds, and to see their growth culminated by the Eagle Project. Because the Eagle Project is really about designing and managing a project. You don't do all of the work yourself. You supervise it, you train everybody else how to do it, and you end up doing a lot of the work, but the whole troop participates. And to see the younger scouts here who did participate get excited about doing historical research just thrills me. I like that stuff. So I'm very proud to be here today. I also do want to point out that the grave rubbings you see behind us were done by Girl Scouts for their two young ladies for their Silver Award when we started the Texier Museum. And they're of some of the gravestones in the cemetery. So, you know, the youth, getting the youth involved in our community is such a healthy thing. Now, we've reached out to some descendants of some of the people buried here. I just recently found out that although there aren't Eatons buried in the cemetery, they're related to two of the families. So some of the Eaton people of my generation have reached out to me to get copies of this info, even though they live in Colorado, other places. So before Matt started this, the cemetery was kind of overgrown. And I know many people have said to me, I always wonder about it when I walk around the lake or when I'm going to Water and Wine. But nobody, when we started, we weren't even sure who owned it. And it took a couple rounds at town hall to figure out that the town does own it. So we did get, everybody did a beautiful job cleaning it up. And then researching, the most fun part, I think, was researching who's buried there. And as you will hear, we have 2 Revolutionary War soldiers buried there, and I won't go into more details about them, the scouts will, and 4 Civil War veterans. People have said when we've had the encampments on the circle by the Civil War reenactors that, you know, what does Watchung have to do with the Civil War? Well, it didn't happen right here as the Revolution did, but certainly it involved our community. The gravestones date from 1791 to 1858, and the land in 1800s was part of the Spencer Farm, which included a lot of the circle and kind of where the medical building on the circle is now was a distillery, an apple distillery that we do have photos of in Texture Museum. Later, Plainfield Ice and Supply Company owned the property when the lake was dammed and used for ice cutting. The ice would be cut. Both Watchung Lake and Best Lake were dammed for that reason, to harvest ice, really, as an early industry, and take it to Plainfield. Because Watchung was just the sticks of a couple farms at that point. The oldest known and documented person at the cemetery is Rachel Doty, who passed away at the age of 85, and she's stone number 22. And the youngest was Maryann O Connor, who was 10 months old, and is at stone number 17. I've also noticed from looking at this that you will see there are times where there are a couple family members who passed away within 2 weeks of each other. And I've looked a little bit and realized, yeah, there were big influenza outbreaks those years. But enough of that. I'd like to turn it back over to Chris. And thank you for coming out today and for supporting this and supporting all the things that the Scouts do in this town.
Steve Pote will offer a few words at this time.
Greetings, everyone. Thank you for inviting me to this very special event. And it is a shame that we can't be outside and enjoying the cemetery right in front of it, but certainly this is going to be a great substitute. I thank you for putting all of this together with regards to the pictures and the Girl Scout renderings there. As you all know, I've always been a big fan of both the Boy Scouts and the Girl Scouts. They represent our hope and our aspiration for our future leaders. You know, early on as my tenure as mayor, I had asked Sue Tucker and other Boy Scout leadership to increase the presence of our Boy Scout Troop 32. Things like Memorial Day, Veterans Day, 9/11 services where they can make it. There are events that I thought were important that they really be featured, that we take the time to allow them to come forward and present our colors and be a part of the Pledge of Allegiance, etc. And then when I was the historical liaison, I worked with former Mayor Jerry Mobus as the liaison, and he and I really started that policy of insisting that Boy Scout Eagle candidates come forward to the mayor and council at one of the meetings to present their proposed projects, because we felt it was worth them coming forward, and it also gave them an opportunity to speak in front of the Marion Council. These Eagle Scout projects, to me, have always been what I'll call a win, win, and win in my book. First, the Eagle Scouts receive those projects which are important to the attainment of their Eagle Scout status, as we talked about. Second, the town benefits by having an approved and a substantive project that really will make a difference in our town, and this is a great example of that. But there's other examples as well. And as Sue and the Eagle Scout candidates have witnessed, I have at times played devil's advocate a little bit with regards to ensuring that the maximum benefit comes out of the work that's being done. The third win, though, is that Troop Number 32 and Watchung Borough and the residents have fostered and encouraged those who will become tomorrow's leaders. And I'm not just talking about future mayors or council members, but future leaders of nonprofit organizations, taking on volunteer leadership roles, serving in the military, providing honest corporate leadership, and giving back to charities. That's what it's all about. And to become a Boy Scout or a Girl Scout, never mind become an Eagle Scout, this is our expectations of our Scouts. Again, both Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts. So with Sue's assistance, I was the sponsoring mayor of certainly Matthew's project, but also I think 3 or 4 others, working with you as the advisor. And I thank Matthew for putting God's Acre back on the map, and again making more apparent the rich history that Watchung has, as we talked about, both Revolutionary and Civil War eras. And I think it's just terrific what you've done with the cemetery. So congratulations to you, Matthew, and God bless all of you Boy Scouts and Girl Scouts, both present and future, and all of you residents. God bless America. Thank you.
And we'll have one final speech from Matt King before we get into our program.
Today I would like to give a brief overview about God's Acre Cemetery and my Eagle Scout project, which was completed here at the cemetery just over a year ago. First, I would like to thank those of you who are relatives or descendants of a veteran or a person now serving in our military. I am the grandson of 2 veterans, one served in World War II, one served in Korea. I am also the descendant of a Benjamin Norman, a Revolutionary War veteran. This is what gave me the idea for my Eagle Scout project, which involved placing Revolutionary War stone markers at the grave sites of 2 veterans buried in God's Acre Cemetery, brothers Sergeant Jacob Smalley and Private James Smalley. Of note, Jacob Smalley was one of our founding fathers of our town. The project also involved transcribing the inscriptions on, taking photos of, and mapping the location of each of the gravestone markers in the cemetery. Family tree information on these individuals was also researched. This information was placed on a website which the Historical Society has access to. Finally, I would like to thank all of the town and committee members who came together to aid in this project. They are former Mayor Pote, the Watchung Historical Society, Mrs. Adario, and for support in their project funding. The Watchung Rescue Squad for the use in their station for meetings, the DPW for assistance in caring for the cemetery, Mr. Rhino for serving as our historian, Mr. Pinho for aiding in the construction and placement of the stones, Mrs. Tucker for serving as my Eagle Scout coach, Scoutmaster Mr. Stiles, members of Troop 32 and their family members who helped research, construct the stone foundation, and place the commemorative stones. It is an honor for myself and fellow Scouts to have received your support and guidance along our scouting journey. In closing, I would like to state that my Eagle Scout project was to honor patriots. Our own Scout Council named Honor Those Who Are Patriots. We are part of the Patriots Path Council. As such, it is our duty to help other people at all times. To all here, I just want to say thank you for serving, honoring, and helping others.
Scouts, if you would like to take your seats, please. And we have one performance before we get into the bios. I'd like to introduce Mariam Contractor.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. The Lord hath promised good to me. His word my hopes secures. He will my shield and portion be, as long as life endures. When we've been here 10,000 years, bright shining as the sun, we've no less days to sing God's praise than when we first begun.
Thank you very much. At this time, I'd like to introduce Didia Dario, and she will kick off the bios of all the inhabitants of the cemetery.
I am Ruben Runyon. Not much is known about me here, but my mother was Phoebe and my father was Daniel. I was born in 1801 in Piscataway, New Jersey, and died on November 17, 1825 in North Plainfield, New Jersey. I was 24 years old.
Gravesite number 2.
I am James Smalley. I was born in 1741 and died February 21st, 1812, at the age of 70. I was married to Abigail Smalley, whom you will hear from next, and we had 10 children. We lived in Somerset County. My sister-in-law was Tabitha Smalley at stone number 5, and my brother was Jacob Smalley, whom can be found at stone number 4. It should be noted I was a Revolutionary War veteran fighting for this country's independence in the Jersey Brigade. My father was Jonathan Smalley, and my mom was Anne Fritz Randolph.
Gravesite number 3.
I am Abigail Smalley. I was born 4 years after my husband, who was buried right next to me, in the year of 1745 and passed away on July 13, 1811 in North Plainfield, New Jersey. My husband outlived me by a year. As you found out, I married James Smalley in 1766, and we had been married for 45 years. My maiden name was Jennings. And throughout my 45 years of marriage, we had 10 children. My mother was Mary Springer, and my father was Benjamin Jennings. My sister-in-law is Tabitha Smalley at stone number 5, and brother-in-law is Jacob Smalley, whom you will hear from next.
Gravesite number 4.
I am Jacob Smalley. I was born on August 16, 1755, and died August 22, 1836, at the age of 81. My father was Jonathan Smalley, and my mom was Anne Fritz Randolph. Tabitha Moore, my first wife, with whom I had 10 kids, is buried at stone number 5. And my second wife was Elizabeth Willet. She is now buried in this cemetery. My sister-in-law is Abigail Smalley, whom you just heard from. I was a sergeant in the Revolutionary War for the Jersey Brigade and on the militia list for the War of 1812. I fought with James Smalley at the Battle of Quebec, Short Hills, Brandywine, Springfield, Monmouth, and Yorktown, to name a few. I had a twin brother, Isaac Smalley, who is not buried here. One of my brothers was David Smalley, a Revolutionary War Justice of the Peace, and another brother of mine, Jacob Smalley, at stone number 2, was a Revolutionary War veteran like myself.
Gravesite number 5.
I am Tabitha Smalley Moore. The exact date of my birth was never recorded, but I was born in 1762 and died on April 18, 1803 at the age of 41. My father was John Jackson Moore Jr., and my mom was Mary Sarah Platt. The Revolutionary War occurred during my teenage years. I had 10 kids with my husband, Jacob Smalley, whom you just heard from. We had a kid a year between the years of 1779 and 1788. My brother-in-law is James Smalley, located at stone number 2, and sister-in-law is Abigail Smalley, can be found at stone number 3.
Gravesite number 6 and 7 will be performed by Tim Logan.
My name is Simon Mirax. My birth date is also unknown, but I passed away on March 16, 1884. I was a Civil War veteran for the Union Army. My rank private was with the 30th Regiment. I enrolled on September 3, 1862, and was mustered or deemed worthy and sufficient to serve just 2 weeks later on September 17, 1862. I ultimately deserted the Army on September 30th, 1862. Just under a year later, on September 12, 1863, I returned to fight as a Union soldier to make up for my desertion. Site number 7, William Mirax. Like Simon, who you just heard from, my birth date is unknown, but I passed away on September 24th, 1871. I was also a Civil War veteran for the Union Army, my rank also a private. I enrolled September 3rd, 1862, and was mustered in on September 17th, 1862, serving for a total of 9 months with the 30th Regiment. I was mustered out June 27th, 1863. I was present at the Battle of Chancellorsville with Simon, who you just heard from, which was the second bloodiest battle of the Civil War.
Gravesite number 8.
I am Martha Wilson. While my birthday could not be determined, I passed away July 27, 1858, at 26 years of age. My father was James Wilson and my mother Ruth Ann. I had 2 brothers, Louis Wilson at stone number 9 and Zachariah Wilson at stone 10.
Gravesite number 9.
I am Louis Wilson. I was a brother of Martha Wilson, whom you just heard about, and my brother Zachariah is buried right next to me. He will speak next. I passed away on December 7th, 1847, at the age of 27. My father was James Wilson, and my mother Ruth Ann.
Gravesite number 10.
I am Zachariah Wilson. Like my sister Martha and brother Louis, my birthday is not known, but I passed away on August 11th, 1858. I died at the age of 23. I was the last remaining of my siblings, but also the youngest. My father was James Wilson and my mother Ruth Ann.
Gravesite number 11.
Mary C. Demler, parentheses, knee. No one knows exactly when I was born, but I passed away on February 28, 1857, at the age of 28. My mother and father are not known. I was the second wife of George Demler, the inhabitant of the first unmarked grave to be heard from later in the program. The knee after my name indicates my last name was changed after my marriage to George.
Gravesite number 12.
I am Mary Demler. I was only 23 years old when I passed away on July 27, 1854. I was the first wife of George Demler, and yes, if you are asking, he has 2 wives, both of which were named Mary. Again, the knee after my name indicates that my last name was changed after my marriage. I had 2 children with George. My daughter, to be heard from after me, had my same name, and my son was named David. You will hear from both of them next. My husband was George Demler, and I was his first wife. My husband is buried at the cemetery but does not have a gravestone. My daughter, Mary Demler, and son, David Demler, are buried at Stone 13 and Stone 14, respectively.
Gravesite number 13.
Mary Demler. Are you confused on who's of the Marys yet? Let's try to break it down. I am the daughter of Mary, who just spoke, and she was the first wife of George Demler. A friendly reminder that I was named after my mom, Mary. Sadly, I passed away before the age of 2 on June 16, 1864.
Gravesite number 14.
I am David Demler. Like my sister, whom you just heard about, I passed at an early age. I was just over the age of 2 on August 25, 1849. I was the first child of my parents, George and Mary. It is worthy to note that while there is a veteran marker at my grave, I was never a veteran. This was mistakenly placed here and cannot be touched or altered in any way due to regulations that prohibit altering historic cemeteries such as this one. If I was a veteran, I would have been the youngest in all of American history.
Gravesite number 15.
I am Louis Willet. I was not a Stewart, but I was married to Sarah Stewart. Just for clarification, the Stewarts are yet another family line buried at this cemetery. My wife Sarah was one of 12 children. Her parents were David and Rachel Stewart, whom you will hear from shortly. I died at the age of 27 on March 15, 1822. My exact birth date is unknown, but I was born in 1795. My father was Thomas Willet. My mother's name has been lost in history.
Gravesite number 16.
I am Rhoda O Conner. I was only 20 years old when I passed away on November 25th, 1818, but was married to Michael O'Connor. Believe it or not, I was Michael O'Connor's second wife. He happened to marry my sister Rachel first. Rachel is located at one of the unmarked graves here at the cemetery. It is important to note that I am a Stewart. My mother Rachel and father David. You will learn that I was one of 12 children, including William Doty Stewart and Sam Stewart, whom you will hear from shortly.
Gravesite number 17.
I am Maryann O Connor. I am the youngest inhabitant of the cemetery. I passed as an infant at the age of 10 months old on January 31st, 1817. My father was Michael O'Connor, and my mother, Rachel O'Connor, is buried at one of the unmarked graves. Rachel O'Connor was the daughter of Rachel Stewart. You could say I am a third-generation member of the Stewart family line here, buried at this cemetery. My grandfather was David Stewart, who will speak next, and grandmother was Rachel Stewart.
Gravesite number 18.
I am David Stewart. I was the patriarch of the Stewart family, and my wife's name was Rachel, whom you will hear from later in the program. While the exact date I was born is unknown, I was born in Washington Valley, New Jersey, and died at the age of 79 on September 23, 1836. Some of my children, Rhoda O Conner, Rachel O'Connor, William Doty Stewart, and Samuel Stewart, to name a few, are buried here with me. I also have a brother-in-law, Henry, daughter-in-law, Anne, and granddaughter, Mariann, who are also buried here. Interesting enough, I owned and managed a tavern. My tavern hosted the first meeting to organize Warren Township and was also the birthplace of the Watchung Chemical Engine Company. It served as an official township meeting place for many years.
Gravesite number 19.
I am Samuel Stewart. My mother was also Rachel Stewart. I never got married in the 26 years I was here on this earth. I passed away on June 26, 1807. I was one of the 12 children, and my father was whom you just heard from.
Gravesite number 20.
I am William D. Stewart. I was the husband of Ann Stewart and the brother of Sam, who you just heard from. I was 75 years old when I passed away on September 5th, 1868. I had 8 children during my marriage with Anne, who will speak next. My father is David, found at Stone 18, and my mother is Rachel, who is a Mayflower descendant.
Gravesite number 21.
Ann Stewart Tingley. I was born in 1794 and passed away on February 29, 1848. I was 55 years old. In those 55 years, I married William Doherty Stewart, who just spoke. We had 8 children. My father was Jacob Tingley. I am the daughter-in-law of Rachel Stewart, whom you are about to hear from.
Gravesite number 22.
I am Rachel Stewart. I am the matriarch of the Stewart family, who you are hearing about, and Mayflower descendant number 200. In fact, I have a total of 8 relatives buried here with me at the cemetery. I was born on March 1st, 1763, and died on October 9th, 1847, at the age of 85. My maiden name is Doty. I had 2 brothers, Samuel and Henry Doty, and 1 sister, Sarah Doty. I was married to David Stewart, located at stone number 18, and we had a total of 12 children. Interesting enough, as William Stewart told you, I am a Mayflower descendant. My father, Isaac Doty, who was married to Mary, her maiden name unknown, was Mayflower descendant number 152 of Edward Doty. Edward Doty was the 40th signer of the Mayflower Compact.
Gravesite number 23.
I'm Henry Doty. Rachel Stewart and I share the same father, Isaac Doty. While he is not buried here, it is important to note my father was also a Mayflower descendant and Revolutionary War veteran. He was a hero and died from wounds obtained on the Battle of Long Island. Like Rachel Stewart, I am also related to the 40th signer of the Mayflower Compact, Edward Doty, and descendant number 202 of him. I was married to Mary Davis, and we had 3 children. My sister Rachel is the only one buried here at this cemetery with me. I was 30 years old when I passed away on May 31st, 1791. A fun fact, I have the oldest stone in the cemetery, and I hope it doesn't get engulfed by the ash tree adjacent to my grave.
We have a total of 4 unmarked graves. Unmarked grave number 1.
I am George Demler. I'm married twice, both to ladies named Mary. You heard from them much earlier in the program, Mary Demler and Mary C. Demler. The two children with my first wife are the only known children I have. One was named Mary, the second named David. I owned Demler's Hotel, which later became known as the Washington House Hotel/Restaurant until it burned down on October 19, 1962.
Unmarked grave number 2.
My name is Valentine Goodman. I was a Civil War veteran, the rank of private for the Union Army. I served with the 30th Regiment of the New Jersey Infantry. I enrolled September 3rd, 1862, mustered in September 17th, 1862, and finally discharged in Virginia on February 21st, 1863, due to a disability. My age, date of birth, and death dates are unknown.
Unmarked grave site number 3.
I am Gerhard Oltmann. Like Valentine Goodman, whom you just heard from, I was also a Civil War veteran, the rank of private for the Union Army. I died on Independence Day in 1877.
And our last unmarked grave number 4.
I am Rachel O'Connor. You might remember hearing from my sister Rhoda. She was the second wife of Michael O'Connor. I was the first. My grave is unmarked, so my age is not known, but I was from the Stewart family. My mother was Rachel, my father David. I had one daughter with Michael O'Connor. Her name was Mariann.
At this time, that actually concludes all of the grave sites that are located at the cemetery. I'd like to introduce Diddy Adario for a couple of final words before the Boy Scouts retire the colors.
Thank you, Chris. On behalf of the Watchung Historical Committee, I want to thank you all for coming out and attending today on this rainy day. I only wish we could have held the ceremony at the cemetery, but now that it's done and organized, it won't be a big deal to repeat it. So look, sometime in the future, we will repeat it at the actual cemetery. Thanks to all those who participated and help us plan and replan and deliver this program. Troop 32, our mayor and council, public works, borough staff, the historical committee members, and many others. I especially want to single out Matt King, who taught us things even we, the historical committee, did not know about God's Acre, and Sue Tucker, his advisor, through thick and thin. But most of all to Chris Vanderfleet, who took on this project and used his creativity to make a program about a cemetery come alive. Thank you all again, and there will be refreshments in the lobby after the Scouts do their thing. Stay dry, everyone.
Color guard, please retire the colors.
Retire the colors. Color guard dismissed.
Thank you everyone again for coming out, and I hope you join us in the lobby for some refreshments. Thank you.